Good day, snow lovers. This is Ethan from the Sawtooth Avalanche Center with your weekend update for March 25th, 2022. As a reminder, this does not replace the daily forecast, so check that out at sawtoothavalanche.com. Let's get started. Well, as a weekend review, it has been cold and blustery last weekend, if you can believe that. Since then, we've had a building high pressure system that's created record-breaking temperatures through the week. So what exactly is a high pressure? When we talk about a high pressure ridge, really what we're talking about is this feature that looks like a hill kind of here forming. And what you're looking at here is a loop of upper air wind speeds. So you can kind of assume that this snaky looking feature across the middle that's all colored is the jet stream. And below the jet stream, so to the south, we have warmer air, and above the jet stream to the north, we have colder air. So if we find ourselves under or just below the jet stream, it's generally going to be pretty warm. That tends to be amplified when we're underneath a ridge, which is this northern bend in the jet stream. The reason that is because there's a lot of subsiding or sinking air in high pressure. And as that air sinks down, it compresses and warms. So not only are we on the wrong side of the jet stream, but we have a lot of subsidence in the upper air, and that's creating really warm temperatures. We do have a low pressure system on its way, as you can see by that blue L I labeled out there, and that will cool things off on Monday into Tuesday briefly as that storm passes, and it might actually bring us a little bit of precipitation as well. So what effect has this had on our temperatures? If you look at upper air or upper elevation sites of Upper Vienna, which is in the Western Smokies, and Upper Soldier, which is in the Soldier Mountains, as a couple of reference points, you can see that the start of the week, this is Monday, we just have had a climbing trend throughout the week. We've peaked upwards of 45 degrees at Upper Vienna, 40 degrees at Upper Soldier. And what's starting to be pretty alarming about this trend is that our overnight lows are just dipping below freezing the last couple of nights. And this is upwards of 9,000 feet, both of these sites are. This red line here is freezing for reference. And you can see that Upper Soldier, for instance, has stayed above freezing for the last 3 days. What does that look like at lower elevation sites? You can see that the change in amplitude of the diurnal temperature fluctuations here, because the cold air tends to sink down into the valley bottoms at night, which creates a larger discrepancy between daytime highs and overnight lows. But in general, you see the highs, which are these peaks, have been climbing. This is the Stanley Ranger Station over the last 4 days. And the Ketchum Ranger Station has just steadily climbed. And today looks like it'll be the hottest day of the year so far. And the next couple days beyond today, so looking forward into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, are going to be even hotter. And again, some of the more alarming parts of this, obviously, the snow does not like to get this warm, so that's causing a whole slew of wet avalanche problems. But the overnight lows are particularly concerning. You can see that the low temperatures have climbed each of the past 3 days, and it just barely hit freezing last night in Stanley, and it remained well above freezing in Ketchum last night. That's had an obvious effect on our danger. We were at moderate for most of the week, but today, which is Friday, we've jumped to considerable, and we're likely to stay that way until the snowpack firms up, which hopefully will happen. Not likely this weekend, but maybe on Monday or Tuesday. But we're looking at considerable danger for the near future. So what kind of avalanche problems are we looking for when it heats up like this? Well, the first is a surficial wet loose avalanche. So essentially these are most common in very steep, rocky, sheltered terrain and in areas that have received more recent snowfall. In this image, you can see that the sun has been beating down on these rocks, which warm up faster than the surroundings and start to melt the snow right around the base of the rocks, which causes roller balls, which can spread out and fan out into larger loose snow avalanches. These are usually thin, usually small, and only involve maybe the upper 6 to 10 inches or sometimes more of the snowpack. But these types of avalanches we saw a lot of midweek, and we're seeing less and less of over the last few days as kind of the easy pickings of this style of avalanche have kind of gone out of style, I guess you could say. They've all been sloughed off, and now we're worried about some larger style of avalanches. So the larger cousin of the thin surficial wet loose avalanches, these what we usually refer to as gouging wet loose avalanches. So as the layer of wet snow at the surface gets deeper, the potential for larger avalanches increases. And you can see, it's kind of hard to see in the shadow of this image here, there was a smaller surficial wet loose avalanche, but then all of a sudden it hit a pocket right here where there was wet snow deeper in the snowpack, and it pulled that out with it, which can increase the size of these. Here's a really good example of that. It was only maybe a few inches, maybe 6 inches to start, and then it stepped down into this wet snow as it moved into wetter snow at lower elevations, maybe that were more sheltered from the wind in this case. The next type of avalanche to consider is a wet slab avalanche. The first of these that we've seen so far during this warm up been spotted in the west fork of the east fork of the Salmon, which is just on the other side of Galena Peak, near kind of the head of Grand Prize. And obviously these can be much larger avalanches. We're dealing with slab avalanches that can be D2 in size or maybe even bigger in the right terrain. And these are just notoriously hard to predict. Essentially, we need a lot of meltwater moving through the snowpack, and we need layers for that meltwater to kind of pool on and create these types of avalanches as it weakens the bond between the underlying bed surface and the slab that sits atop it. Once that kind of gets wet and weak, these avalanches can occur. It's the only one we've seen so far, but we're likely to see more of those throughout the weekend as the heat wave continues. One that often gets overlooked is cornice fall. So if you remember back to the beginning of the year, we actually had quite a bit of snowfall and some very strong wind events that created these large overhanging cornice features. So our advice during this warm up is to give these a wide berth, not only if you happen to be passing below a cornice slope, if you're crossing through lower angled terrain down there. Obviously, you want to limit your time spent there, as these could happen at any moment. They're very, very unpredictable. But also as you're traveling along the ridge, sometimes it's difficult to tell whether you're standing on a ridge or if your feet are over a ridge or if your feet are on a cornice. So the best thing you can do is either walk where you can see the ground or give these extra space during this warm up. Just the sheer weight of these large chunks of snow dangling off the sides of these alpine ridge lines can sag under the warm temperatures and direct sunshine that we're getting and eventually break, like this one here in the Sawtooths. That's all I've got for you. So make sure you share what you see. It helps our forecast and it helps your fellow backcountry skiers and riders. So especially if you see or trigger any avalanches, fire us an observation. It's super easy. You can text us, you can email us. All those different options are available on our website. And we want to thank you guys again for everything you do to help support the Avalanche Center, and enjoy the spring. Make sure you bring that sunscreen, and we'll see you next week.